Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam has defended Beijing's proposed national security law in the territory, saying it will not trample on the city's rights and freedoms. She's called on citizens to wait to see the details of the legislation.
Some of the things that you have said about mainland agencies coming down to arrest people undergoing protest, and they will be arrested, calling the chief executive to step down at the moment are your imaginations or things that have been said by some people. But ultimately, what is to be provided in this piece of legislation is for all of us to see in order to be assured that Hong Kong's freedoms will be preserved and Hong Kong's vibrancy and core values in terms of the rule of law, the independence of the judiciary, the various rights and freedoms enjoyed by people will continue to be there.
Last week, China unveiled plans for national security legislation in Hong Kong, which aims to tackle secession, subversion, and terrorist activities. Thousands of people hit the streets of Hong Kong on Sunday in a mass protest against the planned bill. Our senior correspondent Roland Lim has more on Mrs. Lam's response to critics over the new legislation.
During her weekly briefing to reporters, Mrs. Carrie Lam said and acknowledged that various sectors of society expressed deep concern about the introduction of the national security legislation. But she said that many people in Hong Kong also agreed and supported with the move. She also strongly criticized foreign politicians who've raised concerns about the national security legislation, accusing them of practicing double standards as they have respective national security laws in place. More than 200 politicians from 23 countries signed a statement that the legislation undermined one country, two systems model under which Hong Kong is governed. Mrs. Lam said that those concerned about the proposed legislation needed to wait for its details.
There is no need for us to worry because time and again in the last 23 years, whenever people worried about Hong Kong's freedoms of speech and freedoms of expressions and protest, time and again, Hong Kong has proven that we uphold and preserve those values.
Based on draft resolution, the national security legislation is to be added to as an annex to the Basic Law to stamp out treason, secession, sedition, and foreign interference. Hong Kong still needs to enact its own security laws under Article 23 of the Basic Law. Relevant national security organs from the central government will also set up agencies when needed in Hong Kong. How these agencies will operate, whether independently or in conjunction with Hong Kong enforcement agencies, has still to be spelled out. Beijing has also called on the administration, the legislature, and the judiciary to prevent and punish any harm to national security. Now, opposition lawmakers warn that this could result in random arrests, unlimited custody, and torture of suspects. And a major protest against the national security legislation was held on Sunday. Mrs. Carrie Lam also refuted the totally groundless accusations, she says, that the national security legislation would undermine Hong Kong as an international financial hub. Mrs. Lam said that she'd spoken to business leaders who wanted a stable environment to raise their families and that the new legislation would create such an environment. Roland Lim, CNA, Hong Kong.